It's 6 testing balls from Moeen Ali that take us to lunchtime on day 2 of this 4th test between England and India at Southampton. 81 runs in the session, 2 wickets to fall. Both openers once again getting starts, not converting. That's a conversation to have. Whether Moeen Ali should be bowling a lot more is a conversation to have. What about the loss of Ben Stokes as a bowler? It looks like, well, I'm not saying he won't feature, but it looks unlikely that his services will be used, given enough evidence that we've seen in that session. This is ESPN Cricket for Matchday. Ajit Agarkar, Nick Compton to dig into that session. You take that 100 for 2?
Yeah, I think it's an even session. I think India probably just ahead with just 2 down at probably the most important session. We'll see, but England's kept the pressure on. Not scratchy at times. India again, and familiar story. Openers from both teams. Either of the openers not going on and getting a score, which then puts a lot more pressure on the middle order. And thankfully, India have Pujara. I mean, as much as he cops it a little bit from within the team at times, he's such an important member to have in that lineup.
I mean, it's at these times, these scorelines at 100 for 2, you feel 145 runs more is still a significant first innings lead to have. So that 2-4-5. Just looking a lot nicer. Nick Compton, would you take that? You know, as England, it would be harder work than it was perhaps on day 1 from the evidence of conditions. But would you take that if you were Joe Root?
I would take it, but I think that Ajit's being kind there. I think India are well in front at the moment, given the form of Kohli and, of course, Pujara's, the stickability of Pujara, just grinding away, spending time at the crease. It's getting easier for him. Spinners are coming on. The wicket's a little bit slow. So I think they've got more and more time to adjust with every over that gets bowled on this ball. So I think England, did a good job. I thought Anderson and Broad were very good this morning. Menacing, put the ball in good areas. And I think from England's point of view, they may have wanted to have 3 wickets. I think if they could have gone into lunch with the valuable wicket of Kohli, then I think it would have been even. But I think at the moment, India in front. And it's really important that England gets stuck in after lunch.
They had their moments, England's bowlers, Ajit. If you look at even Kohli, there were a few edges going past Gully. It's still a pitch which is testing a batsman.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit slow, but there was some swing on offer. I think Broad bowled really well. Eventually got his reward against Dhawan. Would have, thoroughly deserved that. The amount of pressure that he put on Dhawan consistently. Sam Curran, I think he needs to bowl a lot more around the stumps. The way he was when he came towards that end of his spell, I think he might have a chance to trouble the batters a lot more. Was consistent, but I think from around the stumps he might trouble India. There is help there, but like Nick said, with each passing over, India, if they don't lose wickets, start to get in a stronger position because they've still scored 100 runs. I mean, 81 runs today. In that session, so there are runs on offer. Ben Stokes not having bowled, whether he's going to bowl, that if he doesn't, that's a huge blow for them because he's the one guy who could, he generally creates things when there is a flattish part of the session. So that could be a huge blow. I still feel Moeen Ali is going to be a handful for the Indians, and we saw that in that 1 over. It could be interesting.
Okay, chat about Ben Stokes, use of the bowlers from Joe Root and Moeen Ali over the next few minutes in this lunchtime segment. Let's talk about the 2 wickets that did fall. Openers, and again, the story is almost at the cost of repeating ourselves. The openers got starts and then they just seemed to perish. Let's start with KL Rahul. Looked very good for his 19 that he had of 24 balls. Lovely back foot punch for 4. Seemed like he was in a bit of a hurry this morning.
Just the over before that, maybe he just felt comfortable. At times you get that feeling, but tried to take on Anderson, hit a couple of boundaries in that over before. Again, sort of soft, good probing bowling from Stuart Broad, but nothing that you'd feel, you are opening against some of the top bowlers in the world. Once you get a bit of a start, you would want to try and cash in, especially in conditions which are probably the best that there have been throughout the series. So yeah, another disappointing outing for him. He's very fortunate that the captain has as much faith in him as he does.
You say captain has as much faith. Nick Compton says it Simply, he just loves KL Rahul and doesn't like some of the other guys. Averaging 13, KL Rahul, Nick, as we look at his numbers, with a high score of 36 in away tests in 2018. It's not what you expect of a man who is supposed to be one of your most talented, most promising opening bats, and he's been around for a little while now. Let's talk technique. I remember again having a conversation with you on Twitter after the second test. Indian batsmen who like to come across a little. KL Rahul, anything that you've observed that seems to suggest he's doing this wrong?
He's clearly a very good player. I think that back foot drive that we saw off Anderson was a sumptuous shot through the offside. I mean, beautiful timing, doesn't try and overhit it. So there's clearly a really talented player there. And, you know, nowadays we see 6 matches or whatever it is as quite a long time to be given a chance. But really, he's still very young in terms of his development, in terms of his exposure to Test cricket. Again, coming to England, most opening batsmen will know is probably the toughest place to go. So, you know, I think he's working things out slowly. I think he has got a decent technique, but clearly Stuart Broad and Anderson have found a weakness, or England have found a weakness, and that's with the ball nipping back, coming back into him. He tends, or the averages show that outside the off stump, when the ball's swinging away, he averages mid-30s, but when the ball comes back in at him, he's only averaging in the teens. So I think that's something that he perhaps just gets a bit far over, his head falls over, and in England you've really got to guard your stumps. I think once you start guarding your stumps and playing that straight ball a bit better, then I think you have a better knowledge of which balls to leave. And I think that's the only area or great area of weakness that he's shown. He's been bowled through the gate a few times. So I think it's an area that he needs to watch out for. Because England are very much targeting that.
Yeah, I'm told
I mean,
that's 4 times
that's
to
the
the
yeah. I mean, that's like he says, that's a clear weakness. That's an interesting thing. You know, a lot of the Indian batsmen are preparing themselves for the outswing, not to nick it, and maybe trying to cover their stumps and play it that way. But clearly, Virat Kohli suggested. Even Virat Kohli usually doesn't get leg before wicket or plays the balls within the stumps well. Has been leg before wicket a couple of times in this series. That's got to do with trying to cover that outswing that England have had the plan. But in Rahul's case, both bowlers since the time he walked in were trying to bowl into him. So that's something he needs to work out. Unfortunately, so far he hasn't.
Nick, you've said many times, if you're struggling, you try and take one dismissal out of it. That's the one thing you try and do. It seems to be a pattern for the Indian batsmen now. They'll come out of their crease, take that lunge forward, try and counter the outswing, and they'll manage if the ball comes in. At times they get trapped, like Ben Stokes got Kohli and like Rahul's been falling. But is it a theory or a plan that you can fault, given these are guys that are struggling and are trying to make the best of what they can?
Well, I think when I use my own analogy when I first came to county cricket, and of course, not talking about international cricket here, but I found playing in England, if we just talk about playing in England, batting against the new ball. I got out LBW a lot as a young county cricketer, and it was a real problem for me, and I ran out in front. So his technique has improved, and I think the same can be said for all the Indian players, particularly in the last test match. So for me, you've got to guard that straight delivery. If you can guard the straight delivery, get in front of your stumps, and tell Stuart Broad, well, come on then, bowl at my pads, because I'm waiting for that one. If he bowls an away swinger, because you're covering your stumps, it's therefore not as much of a threat. And that's what I talk about when I say try and take one dismissal out the way. Stand in front of your stumps, tell Anderson and Broad to bowl at your stumps, a bit like what Virat Kohli does, because he's waiting for that and he gets an inside edge, clips one for a single, and he's off strike. Then they bowl a bit wider, but because he's covering his stumps, it's not a threat to the outside edge. And that's very much a way that I think is often used in England to bat against that new ball.
Okay. What about Shikhar Dhawan? 23 again, couple of boundaries. Start of the morning seems to look like he's got his head and mind alert, and then next one.
I mean, obviously, once the shine comes off the ball a little bit, the Dukes, it starts going a lot more at times. And he got caught in the middle of a really good Stuart Broad spell. Played him quite well till that particular ball. Okay, it was a lot fuller, but was still wide. So maybe didn't need to play. Till then, just like you said, looked really good. Played, like Nick said, I started playing the ball a lot later. In fact, sometimes the bat's way behind the pads. He's that far late, but he looked comfortable till then, till that little spell. Really good piece of bowling, but again, disappointing for someone who's been around for a while. But he has clear flaws, and they keep getting exposed every time India tours, whether it's England or anywhere else.
Which is, if you're Murli Vijay sitting and watching this, 4 innings or 3 innings since I've been out, it doesn't look like this.
Yeah, well, I don't think that should be the topic of discussion here. I think it's what Shikhar Dhawan's doing at the moment, and at the moment after getting starts, he's not cashing in.
Fair enough. Let's talk about what Joe Root must do for the moment. Nick Compton, if he doesn't have Ben Stokes, how big a blow is this? We know that the fact is that they did think Ben Stokes would be limited in his bowling utility. He's been training with a brace on and whatnot. So is this a big loss now, or do they have the people to still make it up?
Yeah, it is a big loss, no doubt a big loss. He's their talisman. He's the guy you give the ball to when everything's gone a bit flat, and Ben Stokes comes in. He's got personality, he's got a bit of character. That's what we really enjoy about him, but not having someone like that to make something happen, particularly as the ball's getting a bit older, and you know, the likes of Virat Kohli, you know, you start getting into a bit of a mindset, don't you? You sort of think, oh, yeah, we go again. You know, Kohli's in, he's got to 20. You know, you almost can sort of predict the future, and I think you know, Stokes is someone who's managed to sort of get that breakthrough. So he's going to have to be clever. He's going to have to use the likes of Moeen Ali, the likes of Adil Rashid in a clever way. Maybe not overbowl them at times, and then bring back, you know, Broad or Anderson and hope that they have a spell, a bit like a spell that Broad had this morning, where you could see he was right on the money. He really challenged the forward defence, brought them coming forward. So you kind of need to mix and match a little bit, use bowlers in the right way, and make sure Anderson and Broad, when they come on, you really get them fired up and try and get maximum impact out of them.
You think Moeen Ali is going to be big?
Yeah, I feel Moeen Ali could trouble the Indians potentially. Also, what he'll give him is a bit more control than Adil Rashid can. I mean, you know, leg spinners can go for a few, but Moeen can give him that control if he needs to rotate his seamers. Look, Joe Root will know if he can get these two out. There's a real chance that you know, England will put India under a lot more pressure. But this is the partnership they need to break, and quickly.
You would have liked to see a little more of Moeen Ali from what we saw on that one over. The pitch giving him a little bit, we saw a little puff of dust to the pitch breaking
maybe,
up.
I mean, hindsight's a nice thing. But
now would you like to see him bowl from one end?
Maybe instead of Jennings. Although Jennings, both Indian batsmen seem worried facing Jennings because they had to go back in their crease, Butler standing up to the stumps. So, yeah, maybe a extra over or two, but at best.
Okay, you get a feeling that this is the session that, it's a cliche, but you feel like this session might be the one that either takes it to India or keeps things still alive.
I think it's this partnership. I mean, obviously Virat Kohli, but this partnership, I think Pujara, you can still control his scoring rate. But once Virat Kohli is in, he's not just in, he scores quickly as well. But so this partnership's, I think, the key for India as well as England.
All right, Nick Compton, very quickly, if you're Joe Root, you start straight away with Moeen Ali and a seamer, or maybe spin from both ends?
Yeah, I quite like that. I wouldn't go spin both ends. I'd have one of my big guns on, probably Anderson or Broad, maybe Broad. I thought he was good. Get him fired up, get that lunch digested pretty quickly, and get him loose. I'd get him on with Moeen Ali and really try and get a breakthrough or put some pressure on the Indian batsmen, because that's their only chance. I think if India bat for an hour after lunch, it's going to be very, very difficult, given that it's going to get slower and tougher.
Yeah, Steve Armisen said one of those tests Stuart Broad doesn't like bowling much in the middle session. Maybe in the absence of Ben Stokes, he's got a job to do. Thank you, Nick Compton. Thank you, Ajit Agarkar. It is a big session for this test match. Either India can stamp their authority on it, or England can still keep things interesting. Join us for our tea time show for ESPN Cricket Info Matchday. We focus our attention back to Southampton for the second session of day 2 now.